Welcome to yet another episode of Rewind Heroes. I am your co-host, Greg Compton.
And I'm your other co-host, Dan Gaines. This is going to be your every now and then video podcast where we talk everything in movies, television, and everything that we find cool.
So, the big thing is, we just finished up a couple weeks ago, The Mandalorian. I'm sure you guys have finished it too. And there is so much to unpack. So I think the best way to handle it is two parts. So today, I think we're really going to cover 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8, because to me that is a complete story. Now 4 does introduce Cara Dune. We'll be talking about her. It's kind of the vehicle to introduce her, but we'll kind of cover that in another one where we cover what I like to call the one-off episodes, you know, and then we can talk about the future of the franchise as far as we see it. But let's get started. So Mandalorian, it came out. It's been a huge hit. It has been the thing that has really been driving Disney Plus, and I think that was their whole plan. What is your thought? This is the first live-action Star Wars show, so just the feel of it, the production value, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, that was the thing, right? I mean, we all wanted to know, what does a live-action Star Wars show look like? And I think that we all agreed that Favreau and Filoni behind the camera, we were excited to see what the potential was. And I gotta say, I mean, from the get-go, the tone, the way they used practical effects, you could feel the world felt lived in. Just from a look and feel and a vibe, I felt like I was back in the time period of the Rebellion and the Empire. I think they captured that. And I was all in from the get-go. And I loved, and even that first shot we ever got of the Mandalorian, I was already getting the tingle, I'm not going to lie. But to see that in live action unfold, I was like, this is going to be an experience unlike any other. Having this every week in your living room.
Yeah, I thought it was done so well, and you know, it's funny. When you see the prequels, people said it was too clean, and it didn't feel Star Wars. And there's something to that, because there's a grittiness to the show. I mean, it's 5 years past Jedi, and so it has that lived-in world that George Lucas used to talk about. And it truly feels like it. I would say the only thing that's taken me out of it, and it's not every time they do it, but occasionally when you get space scenes, it either feels like it's shot in the prequel way, or the one that is the most jarring to me is actually the one where, and it's not in one of these episodes, but it's the one where he kind of fires back and the guy overshoots and he fires on him. It just had a bit of a Star Trek TV quality to it. I don't know what that was, but that's the only time I've seen it. I mean, other than that, you know, some of the one-offs, some of the space stuff there looked great. So I think it might have just been a particular scene, maybe a particular director. But for the most part, yeah, it feels like Star Wars. It looks like Star Wars. Now, I mentioned it's very much a lived-in world. We are 5 years outside of Jedi. They're rebuilding everything. I mean, you know, just you topple the Empire does not mean a new government is in place, New Republic, immediately. So what was your thought just on seeing this time period, seeing warlords, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, well, great question, because I mean, that was the thing too, is we knew the time period, because they didn't hide behind that as far as when it was gonna actually take place. And we knew where we were eventually getting. We know the First Order's out there, we know it's risen from the ashes of the Empire. So that was one of the things I was curious about, is, well, what does that look like? I mean, I love the fact that it really did feel like the galaxy's kind of the Wild West, which is exactly what they're going for.
Oh, yeah.
This Western vibe of who's ruling who, who's good, who's not. I mean, you get that even with Mando.
Yeah.
He's got kind of this moral compass, but then he will blast anybody at any given time.
Exactly.
So I loved seeing the Empire like that. I mean, when those doors open, you're like, oh, this is the client. This is who he's working for.
Right.
And to kind of see a totally different side of the Empire that we'd never seen.
Star Wars bounty law.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, there is a truth. I mean, the stormtroopers, worn armor, disheveled, that is anti-Empire, right? Everything is clean. It's scrubbed away. Everything is, you know, antiseptic, whatever you want to call the Empire look. I mean, it always has been.
Yeah.
And these guys, the stormtroopers almost looked emaciated. You know, even the way they moved, you could tell that the client, for lack of a better term, I don't think they've given Werner
I don't
Herzog
think they
a name.
named him, which is really interesting to me.
He's an amazing guy. If no one has really looked into him, I mean, he's a German director. He's very famous in his own right without acting. Which also, well, I'll come back to that. Something about him, a suggestion that he made that I think made the entire show.
I think I know what
I'm
you're
talking
going
about.
with.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll get to that. So we've introduced the character, the Mandalorian. We finally get his name, but that's not until the very end. So we know very little about him, except for he's a foundling. So that means not born on Mandalore, as best we could tell, or not brought up in a tribe. What are your thoughts on this character? I mean, it's the first time we've really seen, on live action, a Mandalorian.
Well, like I kind of hinted at earlier, the look and feel, I don't think there was a Star Wars fan alive that wasn't on board.
Right.
That first shot we had of him with his silver armor, I mean, just phenomenal. When you hear, I'll never forget it, because I never sat down to watch a live action Star Wars. I'll never forget November 12th, what's all the delays and all that good stuff at Disney Plus. But when you heard the beeping of his tracker, and then the show starts, and he's walking through the snow, and those doors open, you get a real good sense of this guy's not messing around. He's not taking crap off anybody. And I loved how brutal he was in the beginning. I mean, if there's somebody that's messing with him, he's not wasting his time. I mean, I love, what was the line? I could take you out warm or cold, or something
I could take you
lines.
alive, or I could take you. I know.
I don't remember the exact line, but it was awesome. I mean, it set the tone for me. But I love this character because what's becoming very apparent, I know we're going to get more into this, is there's a ton of layers to this guy. He comes from a very unknown past. I don't think we're even we intentionally don't know much about him yet. But you can just tell that he has very strong beliefs in what he's doing, but he also does have that moral compass of guiding him along the way to make decisions that I didn't think we were going to go in the beginning. And that, my friend, I guess, is called character development. But they are doing a really good job with you relating to this character.
I agree. I mean, there's a layered character because he is not a born Mandalorian. There's this question of his past and how much of those first few years of him that molded him and his parents and who are they? Is there any significance to it? Maybe not. I mean, where he was picked up. But I mean, there's a bit to this character where would a typical Mandalorian, would he have broken a guild code or not? There's layers to this guy. I mean, it's just, he's adopted this culture. He's taken on seriously enough to be willing to die for the way, which, by the way, they have the best quotes in this show. This is the most quotable Star Wars. This is the way I have spoken. Every character that I've seen pretty much that they brought in has been phenomenal. I will say his first prey drove me crazy. The blue fish guy.
I 100% agree with you.
I started to get worried.
Horatio Sands that played that character. That, honestly, at the beginning, I was kind of like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars. And it feels like TV. But thank goodness he didn't last long.
No.
And I mean, he served his purpose. But I agree. I got a little nervous at that point. Because that was one of the first introductions to this show.
There's been a few characters like that that played in that way. But for the most part, every main character has been solid. We meet Quill very early on. Nick Nolte is a Nugnaught, because that's just obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine being in that casting room like, well, it's Nick Nolte, of course.
But it is perfect. That character is phenomenal. And then bringing in that they were somewhat enslaved and he had to work off debts and free himself. I mean, they're giving a character like that a massive backstory. I want more of that.
I was, yes. And again, this is a spoiler filled. We're not hiding behind anything. I mean, Krill is one of my favorite, not just characters in this show. I think he would, and I know this is a bold statement, but one of my favorite Star Wars characters ever. I love everything about him. You're captivated in every scene he was in. You wanted more of him.
He's the mentor. I mean, we don't have an Obi-Wan in this. We do not have a Yoda in this.
Kind of, maybe.
But in the sense, you know what I mean. He is the mentor. He is that old wizened sage that has the words of advice, speaks little, but what he says means volumes. So I love that character. He kind of helps set a path, I think, for the Mandalorian, helps him course correct a little bit. IG-11, I think, steals it at the end. It's a bit of humor. It's a great character. I mean, I didn't see that there would be much room for massive development throughout with him. So what they did with him, I think at the end, the sacrifice was...
I loved him. I loved, just in the first episode, seeing an IG droid. Again, a lot of this is seeing these characters come to life, but the way he moved, the lines that he had. And when we thought he was gone, I don't think any of us really thought, but to
No.
get him back. I mean, so I
Yeah.
think he served his purpose.
Well, and the movement was perfect because you see in Empire a lineup of bounty hunters, and you look at this stilted robot, thinking, what does this thing really do? It didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, and I had the figure. I had the action figure from like 83 or 84. I don't know when I actually got the figure. I always, even as a kid, I'm like, what is this
How do I
guy
bend these
stilted?
legs?
I mean, now those figures didn't move arms. They just did that anyway. But the fact he's spinning around and just the amount of fluidity with that character totally changes your whole perception on that kind of droid and what they can be.
Yep.
So he was phenomenal. Well, okay, we'll get into other characters. I think the big thing we need to talk about, though, is that reveal at the end of episode 1, which has taken America's hearts by storm.
And the
Not
internet.
Europe, because they don't have Disney Plus yet. But, yeah, the reveal of that and the fact that that could be kept secret, and the fact that they opted to withgo getting a lot of profit from merchandise at Christmas because they, in my opinion, to keep it secret, is they couldn't hand out molds or anything else to be developed by Hasbro.
Well,
or
I think
anyone else.
Favreau even said that. I think he
Did he
in
say
an
that?
interview said they purposely, because so many toy leaks come out,
Yeah.
they didn't want anybody to know.
Yeah. So when you first saw that,
Yeah, I mean, that was the holy crap, what is getting ready to happen in this show? Because
Yes.
I've always said what was promoted and the show we got were completely different things in a good way.
Yeah.
I don't think the show that we were getting in ads and through Disney Plus looks anything like the finished product.
Right.
And I mean that in a great way because
Yeah.
they totally, you're right, kept the best secret. How in today's world, I do not
Yeah.
know. But when that egg opens and you're like, wait, what? That's not, is
Yeah.
that what? Who is that?
Yes.
And then it just ends and you see the finger and it's like, wait, no, I had to wait another week to find out more.
Yes.
And we've really not found much out. There's a
No.
lot to speculate, but I think that everybody in the Star Wars fandom united over Baby Yoda the child.
Yeah, it's not the hero we deserve, it's the hero we need. The crazy thing, too, is what throws you is that whole 50-year-old target
Yeah.
in the simple light of different species, age, and mature in different time frames, whatever that actual quote is. But that completely blew my mind. And you know what makes this work too is practical effects, and that's where I went back to Werner Herzog, who plays the client, the Imperial, ex-Imperial warlord. You know, he was the guy, if no one had heard, that said, "Do not CG this thing. You need practical effects. You need a puppet." And I think it paid off splendidly. I don't think it would have had the same effect if this had all been CG.
You believe that was a living creature. And in
Yeah.
fact, I think Werner Herzog told Filoni and Favreau, don't be cowards.
Oh, that was exactly the term. Yes, exactly.
Make it a puppet.
I know.
And I just showed Greg before we went on air, they confirmed that puppet cost $5 million. So it was no cheap risk
Yeah.
to make that character believable. But, I mean, it was kind of a gizmo-type feel.
Exactly.
And you fell in love with that character. I don't know how you couldn't. And every episode, they gave that character a moment that, I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, it was just seeing this little, whether it was him walking around or realizing he can already use the Force. I guess at 50 years old, he's probably been using it for a while. But it's one of the most mysterious characters,
Yes.
yet a sense of familiarity, and a character that I think everyone cannot wait to learn more about.
That's true.
And at the very least, learn their name. I mean,
Well, and I'm waiting for Gizmo from Gremlins to actually appear as canon because I think that is a love child of one of the Yoda species and an Ewok. I'm pretty sure.
it definitely looks pretty close.
I'm just
would believe
saying.
it.
I'm just saying. And if you feed them after midnight, it turns into the little quacking space monkey or whatever that
Yeah,
hangs out
there
with
you go.
Jabba.
It's just
So-
going to blend all worlds. There we go.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we mentioned Herzog, you played the ex-Imperial. We've mentioned some of these characters. What was your thought on Big Bad Moff Gideon?
Moff Gideon, yes. Again, I feel like they did a phenomenal job of really developing the key characters. You're
Yeah.
right. There were a lot of one-off characters in episodes that it just kind of felt like that. Like, oh, we need to develop another story.
Yeah.
And those characters were, give or take. I mean, they didn't
Yeah.
resonate. But
I think we will see a return of some of them, and we'll talk about
I
that in
agree.
part two.
I agree.
Yeah.
But Moff Gideon, I mean, you talk about a presence being felt from the moment
Exactly.
he's on screen. And there's a pretty cool way they closed it, which I'm guessing we're going to get into that. But I
Yeah.
love just the way, obviously, this character's knows a lot about our heroes.
Mm-hmm.
He knows Mando's name. He's giving bios on everybody in the room when they're invading.
Yeah.
So this guy, who showed up in the last 2 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
we're only scratching the surface. Probably what's going to be set up in season 2 with him.
And he was stationed in Mandalore, right?
Right.
So,
yes.
Which, of course, the Blade, which I'm sure is what you're going to talk about,
Yes.
the Dark Blade. I mean, to see that in live action was insane. I almost felt a little. I need to see more of it because it felt cartoonish in a way. But that's.
Oh man, I can't agree.
I
with you
need
on
to
that.
watch that episode a few more times. It looked great, but it was just so jarring. I think when you're
Just
used
because
to
you haven't seen that kind of Blade. Yeah?
exactly. I think that's
fair.
the kick.
That's fair.
But yeah, what is his connection to Mandalore? There's going to be a lot here, and there's talk of a purge. I always think the Jedi purge. Now I know that the Jedi and Mandalorians butted heads, so you start to wonder: was there like a second purge, Mandalorian only purge? I mean, I need to go back to some of the animated shows. I've seen them, but it's been a while. I didn't rewatch. I'm not an expert on it.
Yeah.
But I wonder there's got to be something there. Because you have all these underground Mandalorians, which we didn't even get into that. And I'm sorry, we're not trying to just throw it all out there. There's a lot
We could,
to cover.
honestly, Greg and I talked about, we literally, and thought about it, could have done almost an episode an episode of our show on each chapter of
Yes.
The Mandalorian. There's so much in any given episode.
Right.
We wanted to take the time to kind of give our overall thoughts on all the big parts of
Yeah,
this.
because my thought is 1, 2, 3, 7, 8 could almost be their own film. So, and we're trying not to jump around, but it is really hard not to. Because you start thinking of things like, wow, I forgot to mention Cara Dune so far. We haven't gotten to her. She's introduced in one of the episodes that we will talk about next, but then she comes back here near the end. So your thoughts on that character, Gia Carano? I mean, she was what, MMA fighter, or some kind of martial artist?
And really hadn't done a lot of roles with speaking parts. So I
Right.
think there was a lot of hesitation with her casting. It's like,
Yeah.
is she just going to play a badass that doesn't really
Right.
need to do much? But no, overall, I thought that I liked the character. I thought that she was very surprising. I thought she did
Yeah.
a really good job with delivery. I believe that she was an ex-shock trooper. And
Yeah.
I loved the dialogue with her and Mando in the bar, just kind of giving her background and just a really good, discussion. I thought it did a
Right.
good job of setting her up. And I want more of her. And I think that's
I think so
really the
too.
theme with this whole season.
Yeah.
They did a great job of telling a story, but more importantly, they did a great job of really making us want more of each character that we were introduced to. The key
Yeah.
characters, I think they've done a phenomenal job, and Cara Dune's no less than that.
They've given them enough to let you know that there is true backstory, and you want to see it. And have you seen, again, I'm going with cinematic and live action, we've not really seen a lot of Rebel Shock Trooper. She's hardcore. I mean, you've never really seen, you got people standing in the doorway of the blockade runners, with guns and the big eggheads, and you've got like the soldiers in Endor. No one is as hardcore as this. I mean, this is like, well, yeah, I mean, it's clone trooper hardcore fighting is what you're seeing, without a helmet. There's just something about that character, but yet there is this soft side with the child, and whatever affection she has. I'm not saying romantic affection, but whatever she feels like toward Mando's creed, way of life, whatever you want to say it is, or his devotion to the child. But she's a great character, so
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Gosh, what else do we have? There's so much.
There's so much.
Oh, this is a big one. We kind of mentioned it before in our Rise of Skywalker, but the Force healing. I mean, it was hinted at multiple times in the show. It was brought in the day before Rise of Skywalker. But now this was all written ahead of time, so no one would really know whether or not the Baby Yoda would take off. You would assume it would. But if it hadn't, I mean, that was a
that
was
could have been
risk.
a fail. Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you've got a lot of critics of Last Jedi. You have a lot of critics in the new sequel trilogy. So you introduced, which isn't necessarily new in books or in what used to be canon, but the Force healing. And all of a sudden, you have a character everyone loves and gets behind. And they're doing it. They're showing it multiple times and then in a big way. And then you bring it on the big screen for Rise of Skywalker, just saying, hey, it's canon. It works. You can't complain that Rey's doing it.
But they'll still complain.
They'll still
Let's be
complain,
honest. But
yeah.
you're right. They did it. They were very smart in the way that they They took it in a show, and again, it was a risk
Yeah.
on both fronts.
Yeah.
But because it worked, to your point,
Right.
it was very smart then, or at least appeared to be very
great.
smart, that
Yeah.
they then included that in the new film.
Yeah.
And connected the dots.
And not to get too far back into, because we could do another one on Rise. I mean, honestly, we could do a whole other episode on Rise. But, I've since never go to the comment section. Never go to the comment section, but I did. And I've read some people that complained about that force healing in the movie. And I'm wondering, have some of them not seen that, or maybe not in America and haven't gotten the Disney Plus to see the full extent of what they've done in The Mandalorian? But some people say, how can a Jedi that hasn't been fully trained have that? Well, Luke had unconventional training. Rey has had very unconventional training. She has books, manuals, getting what she can from everybody that she's gotten something from has been unconventionally trained. And this child, a different species, maybe very strong in the Force like Yoda, no training as a child. We don't know what 50 years. I mean,
But we don't
he's
know
got
if he hasn't had training.
You don't hear you don't hear him talking. You assume he's a baby. He acts like a baby. There's so little we know about that 50-year maturity level, or when they hit a certain point.
Yeah.
Next question is the way. All of this, raise him up in the way until you find his people.
I know, that's what I was going to say. Like, to kind of wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, looking ahead. I mean, that is exactly kind of obviously, fall of 2020, we're going to get season 2. And that was kind of the setup that we're getting at the end. The child is a foundling. He's going to be with Mando. They are going to go seek whatever this species is. I get the sense we're getting ready to learn a lot more about them.
Right.
What do we think about that? How did you feel they did as far as just setting it up where we're going?
I think they set up very well. I think, first of all, I want to see a Mando helmet with the ears cut out for him.
I think I've seen some
need
fan
this.
art out there that's looked really cool.
I know, we need this, people. We need this. Here's my one thing. I want to learn more about that species. That's where you push the story. I'm not convinced you're going to get a ton of it in season 2. I think there's going to be continued. Now they know that Baby Yoda's a hit. Will we be given enough to continue that story, but not complete that story, because this could be a full through line for the whole series? And how much do we want to know about that species?
I think you're exactly right. That's the fine line.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that especially Filoni and Favreau recognize that. There's some kind of charm to... Look, we were just talking about this before we got on air. There's a book and a dictionary and an encyclopedia for everything in Star Wars.
Yeah.
But there's something kind of charming about the fact that the one species and character we literally know nothing about is Yoda.
Right.
It's literally the species listed as unknown. And they know that. They know that's a big deal. So part of me thinks that's going to be kind of the plot line that's going to be through there is, yes, their goal is to go find that planet and learn more, but maybe that's the whole point is they can't.
Well, and I think Filoni is the only guy really allowed, I don't want to say allowed to do it, because now, Lucas sold this to Disney years ago. But at the time, I remember that was the thing, is that was the untouchable species, as far as history. But when you have a person that I think he has enough faith in Filoni, even though he doesn't call the shots anymore, I think, there's a thing if you've taken the mantle like Filoni has and Favreau, you want to respect where it came from originally, because before the buyout, he was working with Lucas. So I think there's going to be that respect of how much do I want to do.
And Filoni's
So
kind of
they
his
handled
right.
well.
I mean, he was being basically brought up as his
groomed.
right-hand man. So Filoni's never going to do anything probably without George Lucas in mind.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you're right. I think that's going to play into that big time.
Yeah, I feel good about it. I think it's what we will get also next season, 7 or 8 episodes, I don't know. You're going to get one-offs again. People might complain. To come back to a thought you had originally, is this was not the show that was advertised? And honestly, what I think was advertised was a spaghetti western, an old-time serialized show, adventure of the week. The minute we had a through line, 3 episodes in, and then they went into 4, 5, and 6 as adventure of the week style stories, people complained. Those are the ones that are considered the weakest, from what I've heard. I think that's the general consensus.
I would agree with that.
That's what the show, that's what we were wanting originally. That's what we thought we wanted. And so I think that's going to be a part of the series. Always, you're going to have those. And you're going to learn a little something. And we'll get into all those later, but I think, the one felt like, and I'll talk about next week, but when they introduced Cara Dune, that was important for that. It was important to show that that they were never going to stop looking for him with the baby. But at the same time, it felt like a MacGyver A-Team episode. And then you had the same thing in the sixth one when you had on the ship. I mean, that was very much a Dirty Dozen style plot line. I think you're going to see those characters come back. But I think that's the kind of show we were expecting, and all of a sudden we are handed this great thing. We're like, now we just want to see this through, but I don't want it rushed. Yeah. And I like it if those episodes can be a one-off and just give you a little hint. That gave you a bit of a hint of Mandalorian's backstory, people that he'd been involved with.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. I think that's the thing this fandom needs to realize. Are you okay with that? TV has a different pacing than movies. And after those first three, you think people wanted cinematic pacing to this show. Because that's the only complaint I've ever heard.
And that would be my complaint. This is probably where you and I look at it a little different.
It might be, yeah.
I think that I would argue that we have been conditioned in a way in the world of streaming that shows now, when you watch it, you do think it's a through line throughout. And I think that's where they never did tell us it was going to be episodic or a series that was one story.
Yeah.
It was more a lot of assumptions. Same thing with the length of the episodes. A lot of people assumed, there'll be hour-long episodes. No one ever said that.
That's true.
That's just more of the assumptions.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in the through line, but I agree. There's room for that on TV. I actually think they're also still trying to fill out what can we do with this.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what angle do they take with season 2. I think that it'll still have that blend, and I think it works for the most part.
Yeah.
But yes, I would actually say that it was a difference on those episodes we talked about at the beginning. Felt like a film.
Yeah.
And then those one-offs felt like TV.
Right. Now, one thing we did not touch on, we should before we wrap it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you had this underground Mandalorian group, which definitely had that thing where they weren't always happy with him, but they will always have his back. Which, by the way, episode 3, Flying Mandalorians, my God. That scene was
amazing.
Insane.
I think I actually cheered. My wife was like, what is happening downstairs?
And Favreau does the voice of the heavy artillery guy. And then you see this pile of armor in the 8th one. Now, who piled that? I'm starting to think the armorer did that because it seems like I don't think she'll stay there forever, but I think it was, I have to melt this down. We have to save it, preserve it, use it for the future generation. So I think there's a hope there. I'm wondering who is left.
Right.
Where did they go? Will we see them again? I think we will.
I think we will. And I think that's another, again, the thing of kind of what we're talking. So much good stuff set up and asking what is going to happen next.
Yes, but at least they answered why there was an ice cream maker.
Yeah, thankfully.
In
We've been wondering that for years.
I love that. What was the cheap prop? It was like that guy that was running out of Bespin and looked like he was carrying an ice cream maker in Empire Strikes Back. And then what do you see? You see Werner Herzog show up, drop this thing, open it. It's a container safe with a whole bunch of Beskar. So now it's canon. It's a private little bank. Store your passport in at home. So just go to Target, get yourself an ice cream maker. That'd be great. I think that does it for now. We'll pick this up with this episode 2, cover the episodes we didn't talk about, and then all the stuff we totally forgot to mention in this one. Because I'm sure there's plenty.
I'm sure a lot.
There's plenty, right? So until next time, be kind.
And please, rewind.